Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. Ninjutsu was supposed to have originated more than 2,000 years ago as a treatise on the art of spying in the ancient Chinese book on military science called Sun Tzu. It was written by the great Chinese strategist Sun Wu, who lived between 500 and 300 BC. But it wasn't until the 6th century AD that spy tactics were introduced into Japan. Prince Regent Shotoku, 593 to 622 AD, first employed agents to secretly probe both sides in civil suits to get at the truth of a dispute. For the next 500 years or so, ninjutsu gradually developed through the efforts of such groups as the rebellious mountain priests known as Yamabushi, literally mountain warriors. After the death of Prince Shotoku, the Japanese became embroiled in a bitter power struggle between the Buddhists and the Shintoists over which doctrine would be designated as the state religion. The struggle soon involved influential court nobles, throwing the nation into disorder. At this point, a Yamabushi named Ennogyoja Shugindo, Ennogyoja appeared on the scene. I'm going to do this again. Sorry, guys. At this point, a Yamabushi named Ennogyoja appeared on the scene and tried to restore order with Shugindo, a new way of propagating Buddhism. As the new religious campaign gained increasing support from the people, it was inevitable that the aristocracy would force a showdown with Ennogyoja and his followers. Obviously, fearing that the Yamabushi would gain ruling power, the nobles sent large government forces to subdue them. Forced to fight against great odds, these rugged warrior priests borrowed Chinese military tactics and strategy for use in both individual combat and collective fighting. The incorporation of Onmyodo in the Heian period, 794 to 1185, marked another big step forward for ninjutsu. Onmyodo, an ancient synthetic science which includes the Chinese art of divination and the science of astrology, was widely practiced by the Yamabushi and other warriors. The powerful Genji clan, which ruled Japan at this time, along with the rival Heike clan, maintained close ties with the Yamabushi forerunners of ninja. Ninjutsu was included among the martial arts which the Genji warriors were required to master in carrying out the imperial command to suppress the Ainu and other rebels along the frontiers, much as the U.S. government dispatched the cavalry after the Civil War to quell the Indian rebels in the West. Despite these developments, it was the middle of the Heian period before ninjutsu took firm root and assumed the basic form that it was to follow over the next 4 centuries. Aigo province, now Mie prefecture, came under the control of the Hattori clan, whose members were taught the art of espionage by the ascetics and Yamabushi living in the province. And it is here that the Hattori family established the basis of the Iga school of ninjutsu. So, surprise attack. At the end of the period in 1185, the central government of Kyoto had become so weak that the capital was ruled at night by 3 robbers who had learned ninjutsu from the Yamabushi of Mount Kurama, north of the capital. Various Budo schools were set up at this point to train budding young warriors and secret agents, including one famous ninja school established by the famous Genji warrior hero Yoshitsune. The oldest ninjutsu school in Japan. It stressed jumping and the strategy of surprise attack, a sinister strategy that centuries later reached near perfection in the disastrous surprise attacks against the Chinese in 1895, the Russians at Port Arthur in 1904, and the Americans at Pearl Harbor in 1941. Before setting up his own ninjutsu school, Yoshitsune had mastered martial arts taught by the Kurama Hachiryu school, which had been organized by the Yamabushi of Mount Kurama. But neither the Kurama establishment nor that of the Yoshitsune Ryu meant that ninjutsu had finally become an independent art. On the contrary, it continued to be taught merely as one of the collective martial arts. In fact, it was not until the flowering of the Hattori and Momochi clans during the late 12th century in Iga province, the cradle of ninjutsu, that the art eventually came into its own. The rise of the samurai and the shogunate style of government in the Kamakura period. Sorry. Families provided the foundation of Kogo ninjutsu. Another early ninjutsu school, Kusunoki Ryu, was set up in the mid-14th century by a famous warrior named Masahike Kusunoki. Although both schools made good use of the surprise attack, the earlier Yoshitsune Ryu stressed direct fighting methods, while the Kusunoki Ryu concentrated on spying activities through an extensive intelligence network. Kusunoki based his operations on a ring of 48 Iga ninja agents stationed in the cities of Kyoto, Osaka, and Kobe, where they collected information on hostile movements by the enemy. Somewhat resembling the struggle between the United States' northern and southern states some 500 years later, Japan was also torn by a bitter civil war in the 14th century between the northern and southern dynasties. And like the American struggle, the North won out when the warring sides were unified by the Northern Emperor in 1392. But around the middle of the next century, some 75 years later, more civil strife erupted. Things went from bad to worse, and the entire country was virtually ripped apart by one struggle after another until Hideyoshi Toyotomi united Japan in 1590. But it was during those 4 centuries of civil war and ceaseless power struggles that the ninja were in greatest demand by ambitious warlords. Although many schools of ninjutsu flourished at this time, none could rival the traditional Koga and Iga schools for technical excellence. Portuguese traders brought guns, firelocks, into Japan in 1543, and although their use somewhat modified traditional strategy, it was not until the Imperial Restoration in 1868 and the Satsuma Rebellion a decade later that guns played a decisive role in military encounters. Even the use of guns and gunpowder did not basically alter the traditional methods of espionage employed by the ninja. It merely added variety to their arsenal and diversified their strategy. About the only way in which ninja made use of fire before the advent of gunpowder was to relay information by lighting signal fires on mountaintops like American Indians. Sorry, guys. With their smoke signaling. They also made use of various kinds of torches. But now the ninja devised smoke grenades to create smoke screens, made pocket-sized guns for assassinations, and even developed explosive arrows, landmines, and wooden cannons. Some of the latter were small enough to be fired while held in the arms like a bazooka. But now the ninja devised smoke grenades to create smoke screens, made pocket-sized guns for assassinations, and even developed explosive arrows, landmines, and wooden cannons. Come on. Come on. Thank you. Some of the latter were small enough to be fired while held in the arms like a bazooka. Right. Many of the warlords of the time hired ninja to spy on each other's movements. 2 of the more well-known leaders were Shinjin Takeda and his longtime rival, Kenshin Uesugi. Takeda's ninja agents set up relays of signal fires on mountaintops to flash information from the imperial capital Kyoto to his mountain stronghold, while Ieyasugi's spies conducted their activities by disguising themselves as medicine peddlers. Ieyasu Tokugawa, the illustrious general who later established a family dynasty of shoguns that was to last for 2.5 centuries, also employed Iga and Koga ninja, who frequently carried out surprise attacks against the enemy during battles. Although Koga province was ruled by more than 50 ninja clans, only 3 old families held sway in Iga province: the Hattoris, the Momochis, and the Fujibayashis. The Momochi clan governed the southern part of the province. The Hattoris, the central section, and the Fujibayashi family, the northern half, as well as the southern part of Koga province, thus utilizing both Iga and Koga ninja in its network. 3 of the most famous ninja leaders in history were Sandayu Momochi, Hanzu Hattori, and Nagato Fujibayashi, all 3 of whom operated in the Iga region during the stormy 16th century. In order to confuse his enemies and conceal his identity, Sandayu maintained 3 separate houses with a separate wife and family living at each one. When things got too hot in one area, he would change houses and assume a different identity. One of his most well-known ninja henchmen was a man named Goemon Ishikawa, who later became a notorious robber. I think it's Goemon. Goemon is Goemon, was finally caught and given the terrible sentence of being boiled to death in a huge cauldron of hot, bubbling water. Foes of Buddhism. There were 3 distinguished warlords living at that time: Nobunaga Oda and his 2 generals, Hideyoshi Toyotomi and Ieyasu Tokugawa. Oda and Toyotomi used many military spies, but none of them were Iga or Koga ninja. Since ninjutsu developed from the Yamabushi, it was only natural that the ninja continued to maintain close ties with Buddhist leaders. Oda and Toyotomi, on the other hand, were the relentless foes of Buddhism, suppressing priests and burning their temples at every opportunity. Thus, the Iga and Koga ninja became the sworn enemies of these great warlords. This enmity, plus a series of futile attempts by ninja to assassinate General Oda, led this ruthless leader on November 3rd, 1581, to invade Iga province with his 46,000-man army and attack a combined force of Iga ninja of less than 4,000. 4,000 men. In less than a week, Nobunaga Oda had brought the area under his iron fist, after slaying large numbers of ninja and executing most of those he captured. The survivors fled the province and scattered to every part of the country, later serving other warlords. According to a chronicle of the battle, Sandayu Momochi fought with courage and gallantry in combat, but there is no mention of Nagato Fujibayashi. From this omission, several historians have concluded that these 2 personages were in fact one, and the same person using different disguises. 2 of Sandayu's houses are still standing today. The third, the main stronghold in the hills around Iga Ueno called Takiguchi-jo, was razed, R-A-Z-E-D, razed, by Oda. Since Sandayu's death was never confirmed, it is believed he may have escaped during the battle, fled to the east, and settled down in Kii province, disguised as a farmer. This is all the more plausible since this province was beyond Oda's sphere of influence and dominated by several clans of militant Buddhists. Sandayu continued to give history the slip for almost 4 centuries, but modern science finally caught up with the elusive ninja. Only a few years ago, a graves expert located his grave. It was found in a small family plot on a hill opposite one of his former houses in the hills behind Nabari, about 15 miles south of Iga Ueno. Apparently, the ninja leader managed to make his way back to his home country before he died. The secret paths behind these houses, which Sandai used to slip from one to another, can still be seen. The 17th descendant of Sandayu Momochi still lives in the 400-year-old farmhouse at the northern foot of the Okaone mountain range with his wife and 3 children. In 1970, remember. He is Itsuke Momochi, a 58-year-old farmer. But Itsuki is far more interested in crops than dead ninja, and he has only a family document to show for the Momochi family's rich heritage. It seems his grandfather rounded up most of the family's ninja relics and sold them to museums and private collectors in Tokyo many years ago. On a high hill overlooking the city of Igo Ueno, the heartland of ninjutsu, is the towering Hakuho White Phoenix Castle. It was built in the 16th century by feudal lord Takatora Toda, who gathered many ninja to his fold and helped train them. The prototype of the castle of Edo, now Tokyo, the Hakuo Castle has a deep well leading to a tunnel, which was used as an emergency escape route. The castle was severely damaged by a typhoon years ago, but was recently restored to its original glory. The Koga ninja were also centered around a castle town to the north. And like the White Phoenix Castle of Iga Ueno, the imposing castle at Hikone on the east banks of Lake Biwa, in what is now the Shiga Prefecture, is also still standing. Moreover, many of the neighborhoods in these 2 towns still carry the names of the ninja family who once lived there, such as Igacho and Shinobicho. Some historians claim that the Koga ninja are descended from Ronin, masterless samurai, who settled in the area and organized themselves as rivals of the Iga ninja. Less than a year after Nobunaga Oda razed the homes and strongholds of the Iga ninja clans, the famed warlord himself was dead, killed in Kyoto at the hands of a rival warlord, once his own staff colonel, by the name of Mitsuhide Akechi. At the time, one of Oda's leading generals, Ieyasu Tokugawa, was in a small town near Osaka called Sakai and in danger of being attacked by Akechi's soldiers. Fortunately, Tokugawa was able to obtain the services of the surviving Iga ninja leader Hanzo Hattori and his followers to serve as bodyguards for the general on his return to his headquarters to Okazaki. Hattori's protection was so effective that Tokugawa made him and his men his personal retainers, later incorporating them into his secret service network when he became shogun, or military dictator. Hattori was designated as the chief, with his Iga ninja followers given the posts of gardeners around the shogun's quarters in the Edo castle compound. Although actually serving as bodyguards to the shogun, they performed regular gardening work during normal times. But when an emergency arose, they were personally assigned to intelligence missions when the shogun's Koga ninja cohorts were appointed as police sergeants. Oof. Oh, sorry. There's some images. Get the book, you can see it. Buy the book. Go buy the book. Put it on your shelf. Save it. Rescue this book. Okay, the next ninja. The shogun often sent out his ninja agents to investigate the activities of his restless vassal daimyo, since they were constantly threatening to revolt. The feudal lords, needless to say, were always on the alert for these ninja agents and ordered them secretly liquidated whenever their identities were discovered. The powerful Satsuma clan, which ruled southern Kyushu almost like a separate nation, was so wary that it was said 9 out of 10 ninja sent into that province never returned. So, police force. The last major military role played by the Iga ninja was the key part 10 ninja performed in leading the Tokugawa shogun's army to victory over some 40,000 rebellious Christians holed up in a castle in Shimabara, Kyushu in 1637. Huh, that's interesting, right? The last major military role played by the Iga ninja was the key part 10 ninja performed in leading the Tokugawa shogun's army to victory over some 40,000 rebellious Christians holed up in a castle in Shimabara, Kyushu, in 1637. As peace and order were restored to the nation and their services as political intelligence agents were no longer required, many ninja were put to work as policemen and detectives. Some of the Iga ninja, however, remained gardeners for the shogun. Permanent peace also forced the ninja to switch from their specialized espionage training to the development of their skills as criminal investigators. At the beginning of the 18th century, the former Iga and Koga ninja making up the Edo police force were reinforced by ninja from other areas, including Negoro Ryu ninja, followers from a branch of the Iga school of ninjutsu. The descendants of these ninja turned detectives also played a vital role as policemen, even after the collapse of the shogunate government in 1867. The Iga ninja had perhaps the most effective intelligence network for carrying out their police activities. After, the, after their defeat by Nobunaga Oda in 1581, so we jump over back, they escaped by scattering to the four corners of the country. Moreover, their descendants continued to live in their new hometowns where they were also turned to police work. Thus, it was a simple matter for those Iga ninja police to form a nationwide network among the members of their own clan for the exchange of information and the tracking of criminals. While some ninja enforced the law, other down-and-out ninja broke it. Becoming robbers and thieves was an easy transition for them. Goemon Ishikawa, one of Sandaiyu Momochi's leading lieutenants, was perhaps the most disreputable of those who chose this way of life, although many Japanese regard him as a lovable rogue, a sort of Robin Hood of Japan. Even down to the present, the lure of ninja tactics persists among thieves. A few years ago, police in Tokyo's neighboring Kanagawa prefecture rounded up a gang of 10 young ninja sneak thieves. They say ninja sneak thieves. Dressing themselves in the traditional black garb of the ninja, they even broke into a golf clubhouse run by the U.S. Navy. Today, hardly more than half a dozen ninja practitioners are still active in carrying on the traditions of their forebears. Restrictive laws also require them to concentrate on unarmed methods of self-defense for the most part. Thus, ninjutsu continues to be kept alive at present only by a handful of dedicated men.